this is like where you get like a yes or no. I'm going to rattle off some things. So
Okay.
when you left art school, did you had these fundamental skills in painting,
No,
drawing,
no,
perspective,
definitely not.
compositions,
No,
characters,
no,
how to draw fabric,
no.
anatomy,
I see where you're going with this.
animation,
No,
layout,
no,
backgrounds? So,
no.
Paul, what the hell did you learn in school? Ladies and gentlemen, I have another really special person in the industry, not only special to the industry, but also very special in my life, Mr. Paul Wee. I think that he's another one of these really inspiring heroes that I want all of you to meet. I think he's got a lot to say. How we're connected is that that Paul and I, despite the fact we've worked in at different studios, we share only a very small amount of credits. We actually had a beginning that is very similar. And so both of us, we were at school together at Otis Parsons. And I just want to go through some of Paul's bio right here. He's born and raised in Honolulu, moved to Los Angeles to study at Otis Parsons, where the two of us met. Both he and I worked at Deke Entertainment for several years, and then he's been working at The Simpsons since the second season. That means it's 33 years on that show. He's won an Emmy for individual achievement in animation in 2012. Also works as a freelance illustrator for Mad Magazine, Famous Monsters of Filmland. Has done some movie posters. There's a French-produced FX film documentaries, including Phil Tippett's Mad Dreams and Monsters, and also has exhibited at San Diego Comic-Con for 10 years. Paul loves to cosplay, does an amazing job, and maybe we'll get around to that later on today with some of the costumes and stuff that he has. It really is wonderful, and also loves haunted houses and loves to design and act in them as well. I guess both he and I, there you can see where we share the common interest for the love of horror, and also is a huge advocate for life drawing. But this particular talk is going to be about building your education after your education. What does that mean? When I say that, what does that mean?
Well, I always believe that when you go to school, you go to a class, that's just the springboard. The teachers can only expose you, however long a semester is, or your college education is, or class anywhere. I always believe they're only springboards. They only expose you to information. And it's up to you if you have any insight to, like, the best teachers will teach you how to teach yourself. And when you leave school, that's when your education begins. And if you take that to heart, you'll never stop learning and never stop being curious. And I always found that the best instructors taught you how to teach yourselves, and even the worst instructors taught you how to teach yourselves, which we know very well, and we'll get into that.
When I think of what you represent to so many people in the industry, is just that, it's a dedication, it's discipline, and it's core fundamentals, those fundamental principles that we need in this industry. Well, and despite the fact that you work on The Simpsons, you are an unbelievably well-accomplished figure drawing instructor. You've done these movie posters, very realistic, beautiful, beautiful artwork, very professional. That you've got this wide array. It isn't like, well, you just do The Simpsons and you just draw in this style. No, you have all of these varied styles. You do sculpting, you make your own cosplay costumes, and you do your own makeup and things, prosthetic things, and it's just amazing the sort of range that you have in your talent. I even have one of your sculptures that you gave me as a gift. And a lot of that, you would think that, oh, Paul went to art school, that's why he could do these things. Is that where you learn to do these things?
No, no, no. I mean, when it comes down to it,
Because a lot of people probably
you're an
say that, right? They say like, well, you're lucky. You're lucky because you went to art school.
no, no. Art school has nothing to do with it. We both know Richie Chavez. He didn't go to art school, and he kicks our asses both. But it's like, it's all Bruce Lee said, all knowledge is self-knowledge. So if you teach yourself, I mean, you wouldn't be in art school in the first place if you didn't already teach yourself something. And so if you're drawing and you're learning like this, art school can only like crystallize what you've already kind of known. They're giving you more information that you already feel, but you don't have the intellect for. So when you leave school, the real application of that knowledge, is given the test, and it comes through trial and error, fail and success, and both those things will teach you how to succeed in your career. And if you heed the lessons that your career is teaching you, good and bad, you're learning. And if you're really conscientious, you'll continue to strive to pursue growth. If you stop pursuing that growth, you'll stagnate and wonder, how come I can't draw as good as this guy? And so I always try to apply life. My art is the same as my life. You continually curious about the next thing and keep learning about it, and that's the spice of life.
Yeah. So when you talk about, let's say, because some people have this idea. I think a lot of students have this idea about when if you just get to art school, that you'll have all of this information, that they're going to prepare you. When after you got out of art school, were you prepared? Did you feel like you were prepared?
No. I mean, absolute confidence is granted to the ignorant, because when you're going out, you think, I can draw better than. It's like it comes in stages. I'm in Honolulu and I draw better than anyone else around me. You think you're really great. Then you get to art school and these guys around you, they draw really great. And you're like, damn, I don't know anything. Then you start working, you go like, this guy's really great. What do I know? And so the first thing you learn is like, you don't know nothing. You don't know anything. And if you keep that in front of you, you'll always grow, because there's never a point where you feel like I've arrived. As soon as you feel like you arrived, you're dead. It's a continuum.
Yeah.
If you, what is it? Ronald Searle said, if you're an artist and you're ever pleased with yourself, you're dead.
Yeah. No, it's so true.
It's painful, but if once you understand that, you understand the truth of it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, right? So when you this is like where you get like a yes or no. I'm going to rattle off some things. So when you left art school, did you, or you had this grasp of these fundamental skills in painting?
No.
Drawing?
No.
Perspective?
Definitely not.
Compositions?
No.
Characters?
No.
How to draw fabric?
No.
Anatomy?
I see where you're going with this.
Animation?
No.
Layout?
No.
Backgrounds? So,
No.
Paul, what the hell did you learn in school?
That's a good question, huh? Well, I mean, you can say that about anything. Once you hit the real world, you will learn what it's really about. However, the school we picked was somewhat deficient in some of these areas. The completeness of their curriculum was, shall we say, lacking. And it's not to say all the instructors were bad, but some were, looking back, they definitely were. And they didn't drum into you that real nuts and bolts grounding of things you needed when you did hit the streets. And so,
I think that our school,
get angry about that.
when I look back, yeah, you know what? For many years, I was still I was so angry about it. I wouldn't even tell people where I went to school. People would ask me where I went to school, and I wouldn't even tell them. Just say, "Oh, I went to school. I'm not very happy about it," and that was it. Just and because I didn't want to give them, any sort of attentions so that someone would think like, "Oh, Otis Parsons." Marcello and Paul, they went to Otis Parsons, that they're probably that's a very good school, and that isn't the case,
Not at
and
the
I
time.
didn't want to share what it is that I earned with that school because I didn't think that school had prepared me. When I look back, I mean, there were things that the school seemed to have a knack for. It seemed to have a pipeline for fashion. It seemed to have a pipeline where the artists could do the work, they could train for the industry, and there was a market that was already tapped into that, and there was a pipeline for it. But outside of that, and I would say there's probably a pipeline for even the fine arts that it seemed was some level of a pipeline there. But when it came to the other disciplines, there wasn't. And it was like a conveyor belt that just sort of dropped you off, and it didn't drop you off anywhere. It just, they moved you through those 4 years, and you were thinking you were getting an education. When you got to the end, you just got dropped off, and like, well, that's it. Just you'll have to figure the rest out on your own. And so I was so angry for such a long time. But I think that when I look back at one of the things that made a difference, and I think that this is really an important aspect of our success, is, and because both of us ended up becoming very successful in the industry, but when I look back at our education and our schooling, what made the difference was you.
Me?
Yeah, it was John Selesnik. It was John Rice.
Yeah.
It was all these. It was our classmates, and I think that in a way that was the sort of saving grace in our education. When I look back, I believe that I learned more from my peers, more from the family that I had created at school, and engaged in this struggle. Like somebody would test something out and try something to see if it worked, and we would get to school and we would share this, and we realized, I think deep down inside, we realized the predicament that we were in, that the school was not preparing us. And we had a sense of what, because it was easy. You could take a look and you could see what the industry was producing, that we had an understanding that when we got out, we were going to be ill-equipped. We didn't know what we didn't know, but we knew that we were going to be ill-equipped, and we started to rely on each other, and we started building this family. I want you to talk about like just that aspect of our education.
Oh, I think that's always been true, whatever class you're in, that you rely on camaraderie, and you're all coming up at the same time, and you refer to each other in terms of your progress, about where your progress is, and how is this instructor impacting this gang that we're in, because we're all in the same boat. And if everybody looks around like, this guy, I'm not getting it. Are you getting it? When you come to the realization, you're like, yeah, we got to start teaching ourselves.
Yeah.
Because this guy, I can tell he's not there. He's not teaching. He's collecting a paycheck. This is a realization I came to when I started teaching. Like the thing my bad teachers taught me was what not to be as a teacher. And so when I got to teach, I'm like, I'm going to give it all out. I'm going to show everything I got, and give it up, because I was not afforded that kind of real nuts and bolts grounding from a lot of my instructors. They weren't all bad, to be fair, but some of them I can tell were just not there, you know. And if I were going to teach at a college, man, I was going to lay it out. So when I
Yeah.
started teaching, you know, that was the thing. I wanted to like give it all up because I know what I didn't get. And you guys were talking about the camaraderie were my inspiration too. Like, yeah, he figured this little thing out, you know, let's do that, you know. And you could already draw rings around most of the class when you hit the ground. So I took that as like huge inspiration. And all of our
Yeah.
buddies
You remember that
fought.
day we were all sitting there just struggling and crawling our way through class, and John Zalesnik shows up with this gigantic poster for Germany, and because we all had to do like a national poster or something. He does
Yeah,
this gigantic poster for Germany, and he paint this gigantic beer stein. You remember that? And it was beautifully painted, and it was enormous, and it had these big bold brushstrokes, and it blew our minds, you know. And I think all of us were sort of, you know, it opened us up to the possibilities of
Mhm.
what we could do. And I think it set all of us on a path, so much so that when we ended up having a guest instructor, I thought it was really good that Istvan Banyai,
Banyai.
Istvan Banyai showed up to class, and he was, you remember that? What is this? What is this paint mania?
Same thing, mania. I forgot that. It's almost 40 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And with that, yeah, it is. It was, if that was like 2 years into our schooling, that would have put it about close to 40 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and he said that, and I remember it just sort of blew my mind, because he was absolutely 100% right. Is that we weren't trying out new things. We were doing whatever we could to survive. We were trying to figure things out collectively as a group. And I
Yeah.
thought there's something really special that happened with that class. And I think that, you know, the better teachers like Everett Peck and Will Weston were able to pick up on that. And they were like, you know, there's something that this
Oh,
group here, they're working together, and they're figuring things out together. And typically, as artists, artists are very solitary creatures, like you're talking about. Like, you know, when you were in art school, you learned to draw and paint and do things better than everybody else, and then pretty soon you found yourself completely alone. You know, I was doing the same thing, and I pretty soon I found myself completely alone. And we all got to school, and, you know, we've been used to working independently, and then
oh yeah.
suddenly, I don't know what it was.
Oh,
We clicked, we came together, and we started working together as a group
yeah.
to resolve some of these things.
That that changed my life. You know, it's like when you're by yourself, before you find your tribe, you beweep your outcast state because you're the only one you knew that drew.
Yeah.
And you're like, damn, I don't know anybody who's my level. And I hit college and I'm like, these are my guys. You know, you
Yeah.
feel instantly at home. Like they know the same struggles, they know the same isolation,
We can quote
the
the
same,
same movies. We have the same interests. Yeah.
same everything. And it's like, yes, I found my just like the animation industry. I thought my career was going to be sitting in a room all alone doing my stuff,
Yeah.
and that's half of it. But then when you get to the industry, the animation industry, you work in a studio, and then you get exposure to all kinds
You
of
know what?
stuff.
And that may have been why you and I gravitated towards the animation industry, because of our education, that we it was so successful in teaching us how to work together as a group, how to work with others. And
That's a big.
that drives us. It pushed us to grow and to be better. And with that, you know, we were able to uh, sort of thrive in that atmosphere. And it's like that was sort of an extension of working in the animation industry.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was class. I mean, we're lucky that we got the same, working in the same studio right out of college, so we got to come up in the industry together. And, we made some great friends, and, it was some of the greatest times of my life. You weren't being paid nothing, but you had the greatest fun in the worst office ever. But you didn't think about that 'cause it's all brand new. It's all great fun. And, you know, it's like, oh yeah, we're having a great fun. The final product was crap, but you know, you're like, I don't care. I'm working in the, we have a job. We're working. Yay.
Yeah, and when
But
we started
yeah,
working, both you and I started working at a sweatshop. This Adik Entertainment was a sweatshop. It was
oh yeah,
non-union animation studio, and we would go and we'd work there on Saturdays, and sometimes
yeah,
we'd work 12-hour days were common
yeah,
practice to work at Deke.
yeah. And it was pre animation boom. This was like pre Little Mermaid and
Yeah,
pre
yeah. It
Rabbit.
was 1987. Roger Rabbit wouldn't come out till 88. Little Mermaid wouldn't come out till 89. So we got into it. This is before the big boom. So there wasn't any interest really in animation. There was no industry. You couldn't
But
train. Yeah, go on.
but you can work in this little podunk little shop. And
Yeah,
since it wasn't a big boom in the industry, you got to work with the best guys in town. You
yeah.
got Richie, you got Steve Swaja, you got all these guys who are just
Yeah,
drawing.
Alex Stevens, his perspective drawings were incredible.
Brought Phil Barlow in from Australia, and you're like, you get exposed to this stuff. You're like, I don't know nothing. I better like figure out how to up my game because
Yeah,
I don't hold a candle next to these
yeah,
dudes.
yeah. Dan Kornstrom, Steve
And
Olds.
Steve Olds, you're like, these guys were like already dialed into how to do this stuff.
Yeah, Steve.
And I'm struggling like
Steve
crazy, you know, just trying to like keep up.
Yeah, Steve was amazing when we were working on Cops when he came on board, and he just started cranking, and it went from being a uh, you know a very well drawn 2D animated cop show in the future to suddenly it was
He's like,
Blade Runner.
yeah,
It was it,
he was Sid Mead Jr. Like,
Yeah,
damn,
yeah, and he could start cranking these drawings out, and they were the most fantastic. And this is before you could get a book on Sid Mead. This was before
pre-internet.
yeah, the internet, right? And then he was generating this unbelievable artwork. And then Dan Kornstrom was an accomplished illustrator. Marek Buchwald also done all these tremendous
Painter,
paintings.
Doug Ball,
Doug Ball, again, another one of these guys.
Alex Stevens.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, it was amazing, and we were able to build this. I mean, having going to school and building this camaraderie and learning to rely on each other, and then once we got out of school, connecting with this other network of artists, and it was just an extension of that. And I started thinking, and here's the thing: it's like I started thinking about one of the things that I find a little frustrating is that. A writer a writer learns the grammar before they learn to write. There's a structure there that they have, and the musicians learn the scales to train, and but when it came to art, they just kind of like well, you either knew color or you didn't tell you how to get that skill. They told us like, oh, you were either. I remember one of the teachers was talking about design and said, well, how can we become better designers? And it's funny because when you're a student, you ask these questions like, oh, I'm struggling at design. How can I get better at design? And one of the teachers said, you either are a good designer or you're not. And I realized they couldn't teach us how to be a better designer. And but if and so you can see where that art is sort of naive in its understanding or in this education, and it sort of pushes us out of this, the regular way that other industries learn, other industries train. It pushes us out. And but if you turn and you focus on things like because I think learning is more or less all the same. It's the same brain. It's going to learn the same way, whether you're learning how to swing at a baseball or you're learning how to write. And but if you look at athletes have coaches, and when they go to the gym, they have gym buddies, and they build a network of friends that help get them to the next level, get to that to transcend where they are and step up their game and get to the next level. And that's what we did. That's what we were able to build. And I think that's such an important thing in our development as an artist. Do you think that that's something when you look at students today, And especially with all of this COVID stuff, how all of them been working so fractured. Uh, what would you say to students out there that are struggling with this disconnect? Because I think that they probably feel this.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, especially in this day and age with pandemic, the isolation that the energy and camaraderie we got and the learning we had from each other, it has a presence. And when you're together, you learn those things, or you look over the shoulder of somebody and, oh my God, that's great. Or if it happenstance. With the digital disconnect, everybody's in their little bubble, their little screen. There is a disconnect about how you can tangibly connect with somebody and learn from them. I mean, these days there are more opportunities to learn technique and all kinds of stuff through YouTube, and you can virtually learn anything online now.
But you don't have the camaraderie.
But I always feel that the energy that comes from the of hanging out, unplanned accidents and stuff like that, or sitting next to somebody in a life drawing class, or going to the zoo and drawing. These things are unquantifiable in the digital age, and if you don't have that, I think you're missing a certain amount of energy, because you have a tunnel vision about the things you like, and the algorithm narrows it down to the point where it only shows you the things you like, but not the things that you should, like happenstance or happy accidents, things like that,
Or to
can
challenge your thinking, right?
or
I
challenge your
think that
thinking,
when, because if we're
or
looking at an
struggle.
algorithm, we're only going to get fed those things that we're already interested in. Like, what about those
Yeah,
things we're not interested in?
yeah, you
It's
got to
it's
be
like
exposed.
Ishwan Banyai when he came
That's
up and he said,
Yeah,
like, hey, why are you guys all painting? Why aren't some of you drawing?
yeah. He brought this European sensibility that we had no idea about, and you're like, wow, that's another way of looking at this stuff, because we're all like this. I have to learn this technique, and I have to do this. Meanwhile, you're trying to learn this. You got the blinders on. This guy comes from left field and goes, why not try something else? And you're like, oh yeah, didn't think about that. So in a way, that's a it's it's essential to learn these kind of things. But I fear that in this day and age, that kind of thing is kind of fading in the background a little bit, because everybody's becoming compartmentalized, and some of the art looks all the same. Everybody's using the same digital brushes, and things come a little easier, but then what you have to say is not easy, and these things are being potentially have the potentially being lost into, like, it might be evolving into something else. We can't predict what it is, AI art and all this stuff. So,
But
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 I
even
think I do
but
think in
even with
person.
AI art, I think that AI art it's interesting, and I think it's going to force us. It's going to revolutionize our industry,
Mhm.
because in the same way that photography revolutionized our industry, that before,
You had to
artists
paint it.
you were a portrait painter, so you would get hired by some rich family, and you would be in the rich circles, like a John Singer Sargent or an Anders Zorn or Joaquin Sorolla, and you would go around and you'd paint the portraits of all these rich families, and this is how you made your living. And all of that went away when photography came around. Then I think the same way that AI is going to challenge artists, because when it comes time to rendering something and painting something with unbelievable detail, looking online for, like, if somebody's looking and says, okay, I need an igloo in hell. You type this thing into the AI, and the AI will give you an infinite amount of varieties of this particular theme, a subject, and it goes off all the images that already exist on the internet. And but where's the connection? Where's the human connection? And you think, like, oh my gosh, AI is going to take our job away. It's like, well, if that's your level of intellectual engagement with your art, then yes, it will take your job away. But if you're the kind of person that is thoughtful and thinks about your personal human experience and what something means to you, and you draw from that vantage point, I think that that's always going to be relevant. It's relevant today. It was relevant
Yeah.
1,000 years ago, and it'll be relevant another 1,000 years
I
from
mean,
now.
isn't that what art is? You're enjoying somebody else's point of view and how they see the world. That's why, if you draw something or paint a portrait of somebody, it has more of an emotional connection because you're saying this is how this person feels about this person, and you get to step into their shoes
Yeah.
and feel what they have to say about something. It's true about anything, even writing or whatever. You walk into their head, and then you learn about how they feel about something, and that enriches your experience. Like you watch a character in a movie that doesn't even look like you, but you identify with it. It's something that you feel within yourself, and it'll enrich your point of view. And if you feel like this machine is doing the art, well, whose point of view is it? Open the
Yeah.
pod bay door, Hal.
Yeah.
It uses the human touch, regardless of the technique. It could be digital, it could be anything. It doesn't even have to be, traditional, but it has to have some human point of view that somebody can identify with. And if you're trying to create machines that create to do the work for you, then you've lost that human touch. And so what is art anyway? That brings up that question. Is it art after that, or is it just a machine just putting stuff together? The machine is still unintelligent. It only does what you tell it to do. And art will always be art, no matter the technique, but you still have to have something to say, and that's always been true.
Yeah. And it's the emotional engagement that you have with
Yeah.
what you're going to say. Because the thing is, I think that art is a language. It's a visual language, and at the same time that you say things with your words, you can also say things with your actions, and you can also communicate with visuals. And it's so important to get what's ever inside of you, this feeling. Because usually when I start figure drawing, I start drawing somebody, I need to warm up. What I'm really warming up to is how I feel about the person. I realize that as I'm drawing, I haven't connected with the person yet, and suddenly they do a particular pose, or there's an expression in their face. And the same thing happens to the model. I see them; they're posing, and they're posing in front of the class, and then at about the half an hour mark, or maybe even 45 minutes, suddenly the model goes somewhere else, and I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that moment when the model is no longer in the room and is somewhere else. And I don't know where that is, but I'm reading whatever it is that their body is doing, whatever their body is telling me, and that their expression, everything. And that's what I try to capture. And it's my
Yeah.
impression of their experience, their human experience. And this is the connection. So there is the technical aspect, but there's also that emotional aspect. And that's where I think that it's so important to hold on. It's important to have fundamentals. It's important to be able to have the skills to put down the work. But that emotional connection is paramount. That's really what it's all about.
I mean, that you're talking about the space of one class, but we've drawn models for decades at this point, the same model.
Yeah.
And I find my point of view of this person changes and grows every time I've drawn. I draw the same person for decades. They keep coming back to my classes, and I draw them, and I've drawn you a billion times before, but each class I come to, I have a different point of view. I'm getting older, she's getting older, he's getting older, and you still enrich your relationship through drawing them. You'll never get them. So you have to keep trying and get to something, and your point of view changes, but it's that connection that you have between the artist, the subject, and the art that communicates with the audience. And that is still a sacred thing, no matter what it is. And
And
you're
that really
still
goes.
trying to express it.
Yeah, and that also goes to it's crazy that where this conversation is going. that this also goes to the relationship that we have not only with each other as peers, but or the relationship that we have with a mentor or an instructor, but also the relationship that we have with the models, that in some cases we've been drawing them for many years, and we've been through the ups and downs in their lives. We catch them at different moments in their life, different moments in their journey in this world, and and we're drawing to capture that. And again, there's another relationship there. There's more, I would have to say, teamwork, that
Mhm.
happens in this relationship. That it isn't, sometimes we think of art as being very, very solitary, but here's yet another example where it's so important to cultivate these friendships, these relationships that
Oh yeah.
allow us to grow and to develop, not only as artists, but to develop as people. Because when we develop as people,
Mhm.
that we actually have something to say. Because if not, then we are
Yeah.
just like the AI,
That
right?
that that's when your art gets better. I mean, it doesn't even have to be technically good, but if you have a great point of view, people will respond to it. And I would say that that's the main thing, is if you can communicate your idea directly to an audience, it's all is still a relationship. Your model, the artist, and the audience. I mean, this is the triumvirate of communicating your idea, because your art is nothing without with an audience.
Yeah.
Whether they hate it or like it, it's still a you elicit a reaction of some sort. That's why some artists are really provocative. They'll do something horrible, and and people will hate it, and they dig that. You want someone to like your stuff, it feels great. And
It's
so
interesting because I've
communicated it.
there was a realization that I had a few years ago, that people, when they look at art, when audiences look at art, they want to feel something, and it's your job to help them feel something.
Yeah, yeah. It's
You
all
can't simply,
communication.
yeah, it's all communication, but it's communication. It's that, like, sometimes the written word can say something, but poetry has a way to transcend that language and speak to more of an emotional part of us. And then when it's set to music, and you have this song, it transcends that even more. And I think
Yeah,
that art has that capacity where it's able to
it's the same.
communicate things that there are no words for. When somebody talks about, that they talk about a passion or a love that they have, the words sometimes are inadequate in order to sort of capture the depth of what somebody's feeling. But
Yeah,
you can capture that with artwork. You can capture, things as anger, fear, love, tranquility, all of these things, and you can build those emotional moments for the audience. And that's
yeah.
what they want to do. They want to be able to see it and feel something. I love that when I think it was, it was Degas. It was Edgar Degas said about Mary Cassatt's work that she feels the way I feel. And I thought that was wonderful, because that's what he was talking about. He was talking about this, that he had a connection with the artist because the artist made him feel something that he felt strongly about.
Oh
It's sort of
yeah,
like when somebody says something that you agree with, and it's like, oh my gosh, look, you think the same way I do, and you find this kinship, and that's what he was talking about.
yeah. You're lucky if any of your art like pushes the button, finds that little piece in somebody that it speaks to them, and then you've done your job. If just one person responds the way you want them to respond, you've done your job.
Yeah,
It completes the circuit. I always likened like you were saying about music. I always taught students about, you gotta learn your ABC first, and you put your whole alphabet together, and you start making words, sentences, and you put those sentences together, you make a paragraph, and you bring it all over to poetry, then put music, and then you make it to a song. And when you gather enough of your skills together and be able to communicate that song, then you become successful, at more successful than not, of creating a piece of art that speaks to people.
yeah. And here's the funny thing, is that even even that relationship continues. So, you start out at school working, with your peers, and then you outgrow those peers, and then you end up in art school, and you find your tribe, you find your family, you get into like we did in animation. We plugged into an art community, and that's the wonderful thing that animation has. We're working, we're training, we build this other relationship with models that we've been drawing and painting,
Yeah.
and we get to learn about their lives. I've got this wonderful drawing that Nathan Fowkes did of Clark. Remember the model? He was incredible.
Yeah.
And
Legend.
I can't look at that drawing without getting weepy, just because I remember the person, and
Oh yeah.
Nathan was able to capture something about that person. So we have this relationship with the model, and ultimately we have a relationship with every person that looks at our artwork. I mean, that relationship continues, and it extends to
Yeah.
those people that are looking at our work.
Yeah. And it's great when you can elicit reactions. You don't always get to see the people, get reaction to your work. It's like when I do Halloween stuff, when I do costumes, you sweat and build this thing, and you hope people will react to it. And then when they do, live right in front of your face, it's like, oh my God. It's like doing a great painting and people are like, oh my God, that's a great painting. Same thing, when you apply it to any other thing in your life, you can, it doesn't matter if it's traditional art, my show, the movie, you just want to express yourself, and it's, you can't put a price on it. It's absolutely priceless. It's intangible, and it's why we do it. That's why we suffer so much for our work, because we want to communicate so badly. We have something to say so badly. We want some people to like listen to that and give us some sort of affirmation, positive reinforcement, even criticism. You do it long enough, you get criticized long enough, and it all has value after a while. And I find the longer I do it, the more valuable everything becomes. Even the bad stuff. You start enjoying. Okay, why was that bad? Why did I fail at that? And then you start becoming curious of pulling that apart and say, yeah, how can I get better, and constantly get better.
Yeah, curiosity is another one of those things that is a friend to artists. To look for
Oh
uh,
yeah,
those interests and feed those interests, in order
yeah,
to keep the mind stimulated, to keep it engaged.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
You're
one of
not
the things
curious.
actually. What you swerved right into it, but I wanted to get that a little later on,
Okay.
which is this, protecting our artistic self, growing that. I had a couple questions about. I wanted to ask you about teachers that, because here we are, we're building, we're building our education after our education, and sometimes, like, some of the teachers that we met, some of the lessons that they gave us, that for good or for bad, that they helped us to grow, and they helped us to develop, and there are things that we took with us on this journey. So I'm going to throw out a couple names, and I want you to tell me, but first thing that comes into your mind, like was that experience? What was that relationship? And, what did you learn? What did you learn about that? Everett Peck, the late, great, fantastic humorist, illustrator, Everett Peck.
Well, what can I say? I mean, he was the nicest teacher I ever had. And he was the most unique teacher I ever had because nobody drew like him. And I was too stupid at the time and ignorant. You're just a kid to like appreciate his style for what it was, how advanced it was, and the ways he taught. And was like, yeah, it's, when you're young, you don't know these things. You're not sophisticated enough. You don't have enough behind you. And then when you see this guy, you're like, I can't, I can't grasp what he's doing. And then later on, you appreciate the genius of it. And he passes away, you appreciate it even more because how rare and unique he was. So yeah, I think he was really influential because of just the uniqueness. And beyond that, even out of college, we worked with him in the industry. as a designer, and he's like he could do anything. It was amazing. Yeah, I can't say enough about him. He's
Robert Kopecki.
Kopecky. I liked him because he was one of the instructors that gave us real nuts and bolts of how to paint. To this day, laid out a palette just like he taught us. It's these real simple stuff that he taught us that was golden to me, because not a lot of the instructors did that. And so, yeah, I really appreciated his work and his teaching method.
Yeah, what I liked about what he did, and a couple other teachers, Everett being one of them, that they showed us, they demystified the process of art. I think there's a lot of mystery, especially back in the day when you and I were learning. It was all analog, and so a lot of it, you had to deal with mistakes and failure. If you didn't prep something right, you couldn't get the texture that you wanted to get, that sort of thing. And then just for him to methodically go through that, everything right down to how to set up a palette, and he demystified it. And I am so appreciative of him for that as well.
I didn't know how to do that till he taught me that. It's the
Yeah,
skill.
no, we were all
for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Dave Willardson.
Dave Willardson. Well, by the time we got to him, he was pretty much a California illustration legend. I don't know if he was a great instructor. You can be a great artist and not be a great instructor, and a great instructor and not a good artist. And I felt he was one of the better artists that I didn't know he was a good instructor, and I felt a little bit of exploitation from him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't know if he felt that because he had us do conceptual work for a movie poster. We had no idea what it was, and we realized it was a real movie. And you're like, damn, he's getting free art from us.
Yeah,
he's getting free ideas.
Yeah.
And then you see a real poster, and you're like, yeah, this is what we were working on a job. In one way, it was good because you were working on a real job. On the other hand, you felt a little exploited because you were giving him free ideas later on.
I will say this though.
Huh?
I will say this. I felt like he taught us the importance of the concept.
Yeah.
That
how to work through concepts.
Yeah, that he did it. He exploited us. Did he really teach us much in technique? No, not really. Did he?
Not at all.
There was we didn't get any of that out of him. But he was so focused on the idea, getting that idea right, that initial idea, and driving at that. And then he called it the kicker. And he would say, "Where's the kicker? Where's the like?" We would do this thing, and we just, "Where's the kicker?
Where's the kicker?" Yeah.
And then it was sort of like an inside joke for all of us. But that really was unbelievable.
It's for real, though.
It was unbelievable, and perhaps one of the most valuable things I got out of art school. Will Weston.
Oh, Will. He's one of the better ones too.
Yeah.
We complain about a lot of our instructors, and there were some of them that weren't so great, but the good ones were great. And Will is one of them. He's teaching to this day, and I still look at his lessons like, damn, he's still amazing. I'll never forget the first time I went to Paris. I went by myself. I was on a pilgrimage. And then I was hitting all the places that I wanted to hit. And I hit the Rodin Museum. And I was like sitting there in the garden, having an orangina. I was like, damn, this is awesome. And then Will Weston walks right by me, and we both look at each other and like, what are you doing here? It was the greatest thing. And he goes, he always said, he goes, I don't worry with you. You're going to succeed. He always said that. We even had a little thing at graduation, and he signed it, and he goes, I don't worry. And he always instilled a lot of confidence in me when I didn't have it, but he even teaches to this day. And I look at his chalk talks, and they're brilliant. They're amazing. I'm still learning from him. So yeah, he was awesome. I loved it.
Tremendous. And he's another one of these guys that demystified it. I remember that I had a tendency to be very precious with my painting. I would just log unbelievable amounts of hours because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I figured if I just tried harder than everybody else, I would be successful. And that was like that mentality, because from boxing, right? If you train harder than everybody else, it's going to make the difference. And and it wasn't. But and I was too precious in the painting, and he would just get a big brush stroke, and then he would start painting over my drawing, and he would just lay things out really quickly. In just a matter of minutes, he would cover a tremendous amount of ground. And again, he's one of these guys that demystified it. You know, what something would seem daunting. I felt that he had a way of sort of you know, it's sort of daunting, and the artwork has a tendency to bully you around. And he had a way of showing us who was in charge, and
Yeah,
I carry that with me today, like just to be more fearless with our work.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And Richard Mulholland.
You mean our old drill instructor,
Yeah,
Richard Milholland? Milholland. He, in terms of art instruction, nuts and bolts, nothing at all. But how to be an artist and to have stamina, that's what he taught me. So he wasn't a great instructor in terms of teaching you how to draw, but he taught you how to sit in one spot for 6 hours and draw this one thing.
yeah,
And I I didn't have that stamina before. I like
yeah,
sit here 20 minutes, I'm going to do something else. We had the foundation class. You had to sit in this class for 6 hours and draw your freaking shoe. He told us to take our shoe off, put it on the table, and draw it with his little rendery, niggly little ways that his style was.
yeah,
And I hated it. It was like I'm not learning anything from it. And then later on, you said, yeah, I learned a lot from that
yeah.
because
It was
it
discipline.
had
He was
stamina, discipline to stay.
he was teaching us discipline.
He was gruff, he was rude, he was all of these things. He would say, you all won't make it. You'll all be on the corner in your chicken suit and trying to make
Yeah,
a living that way.
yeah. Selling chicken with a chicken suit. You know,
Selling
like
chicken suit in front of Pioneer Chicken on Alvarado Street.
yeah,
And he used to like push our buttons. We used to like get
yeah,
really mad, like, I'm not gonna be like that. I'm gonna be great. I'll show you.
yeah.
Bingo. He got the lesson across.
Yeah, yeah. And then he was talking. Remember, he held up his pencil. This, you know what it's all about?
Yes,
It's about
yes.
this. And then he talked about one day that he had lost the pencil, and all the blood drained from his face.
Yeah. He had put all his jazz into one pencil.
Yeah,
It was like, oh,
yeah.
but
And
he
but
did
he
he did teach me that.
yeah,
Yeah.
he taught us about discipline. One of the things I remember that he taught us was that he came to work. He came to school one day, and we were all going to be drawing in class. So for 6 hours, we are going to be like drawing our shoe or whatever. And he brought one of his jobs in that he did for the newspaper, one of these pencil renderings.
Mm-hmm.
And he came in. He had this jean jacket, and he had this flannel shirt, and he had his jeans and work boots. And then he even said, he goes, when I work, he says, I put on my work clothes, and it helps me get in the mindset to work. And it's so important to do that. You have to train your mind, and you have to discipline your mind to prepare yourself that when you are going to work, you're going to work. Because I think as artists, we have a tendency to be distracted by all these different things. And
Yeah.
for him, it was, that he had this tenacity that helped him to succeed, and that he was trying to teach us that same tenacity, even if we couldn't, we weren't going to learn his pencil technique or his pencil skill or his ability to call reference and then draw that reference for the next 16 hours. That
Yeah.
perhaps wasn't what we gleaned from it, but we did glean discipline
Yeah.
in his class, and for that
Yeah.
I'm really thankful. So in some ways, when I look back at our education in art, that we didn't get some of these fundamental skills that we were looking to get. But and our school was really lacking in that, but there were still a lot of things that we did glean from it, and I think it also gave us the hunger and the desire to build our
Mhm.
education after our education.
Yeah. Yeah. I would tell my students, I would give them the background of how I came up, and I said that my school was good, but it was deficient in a lot of fundamentals. So I'm going to be teaching you these fundamentals. And then I told them, my bad teachers taught me how I don't want to be, and it taught me how to teach myself. And if you're any kind of artist, you're self-taught. Even if you went to school, you're still going through the motions, still working out your problems. The teachers and the classes teach you, demystify some of the techniques, but you're still teaching yourself. And when you leave this classroom, you're going to continually teach yourself. And that's what my teachers, good and bad, taught me. And if you're on the ball, you'll realize this lesson. And that's the one you take with you the rest of your career, how to teach yourself.
Yeah.
And old Campbell thing, those who think those who thinks he knows doesn't know. Those who knows he doesn't know knows. So if you're if you want to have your you want to know that you don't know, so you continually learning. So if you're comfortable with this ignorance, and if you're comfortable with the fact that you're ignorant, then you'll learn. And I always bring that with me, and no matter what I do.
Yeah, I remember there was a critical point when in my education when I was going to art school, and we were in a painting class, and I didn't want to paint the way the teacher wanted us to paint because I didn't believe that it was fundamental enough. It wasn't what I was looking for, wasn't what I expected, and at a certain point I realized that I was wrong, and that my desire to grow and to learn was greater than my ego. And I swallowed my pride, and I started, to allow the teacher to instruct me, step by step, to take me through that process. And
Yeah,
I remember, like, the teacher, and with your students, which ones are the ones that are more receptive and which ones are more resistant. And I was one of the more resistant students, and it must have shocked him. I just remember that he just thought that it was a put on, because I asked him how to fix something. I says, I can't do this thing here. And he went in and he just kind of gave me a little like a little tip. And I think he was expecting me to sort of like to give him some pushback. And I didn't. And then I worked on it a little bit, and then I asked him again. And then pretty soon he started to give me the advice, and I started to learn and to grow, and how important it was to be able to accept that I didn't know anything, and to accept that there was something, even though this was different than what I expected to learn or how I expected to grow, that it was still very valuable to me, and that I needed that relationship with him.
yeah,
And it just goes back again, artists building relationships in order
yeah,
to transcend where it is that they are.
yeah. If they're self-aware in any capacity, they'll learn that.
Yeah,
If they don't, they won't. And it's your job as a teacher to, like, break that down and say, leave your ego at the door. I remember Glenn Vilpu was teaching me, and he was demoing on my pad, and it wasn't turning out. And he goes, "Well, you can't win them all." And I never forgot that. Like, yeah, you can't win them all, but you can do your best. And this is Glenn Vilpu talking to me.
yeah. And
He
what?
just
Here's
he
the
just said,
funny
"Yeah,
thing.
you can't win them
Is
all." And he laughed and he moved on. I was like, "That's great.
Yeah,
Great. You can't win them all."
but here's the thing. I remember that Peter DeSev was doing a demo one time, and we were with Bobby Chu and Schoolism, and we had gone someplace. I can't remember, someplace in Europe, and we were doing we were all doing a demo, and I was explaining the fractal method, and he was doing a character drawing. And so he jumped in there and he was doing this character drawing, and it was very, very, very Peter DeSev. And halfway through, he said, "Oh, well, it was one of those, well, you can't win them all." And here's the funny thing. It's like, had he not said anything, all of us would have been fooled. Only he knew. Only he knew that it wasn't up to his standard, but to us, it was this unbelievably beautiful Peter DeSev drawing. And I
Yeah,
think that sometimes it goes back to that I created this adage, that I realized in our industry, that when you're good, people notice. When you get better than that, your peers notice. And when you get better than that, even still, only you notice. If we think of the core things, the core elements that you want to share with artists out there, artists that are struggling, in some cases they're just struggling alone. And the importance of this conversation is building the education outside of your education, and then also building relationships that are going to help you, get to this next level. I want to ask you, in that core, what is important?
Well, the main thing is to build those relationships, like we were in college, when we had those kind of things, build it. Even nowadays, when things are so broken up, you have to reach out and to your community and use that to it takes courage, but you have to expose yourself, put yourself out there for the scrutiny, and that's
Yeah.
painful. But
And
but
there's
then,
and there's different facets of that, right? There's the
yeah,
mentor, there's the teacher, there's the
yeah,
coach, there's your peers, and each one of those is a different relationship that
and your
actually,
general audience, and your
yes,
general audience. You post something and it's getting all this, and you want to try to get approval for that. But then also, just master your craft. Don't be ignorant of that you've got it. If you feel you've got it, you don't got it. If you don't, you're always got it. You always can improve your basic skills. That's why they're basic. And it was the same in millennia ago, and it's the same now. If you're ignorant of that, you may not improve. It's like, yeah, if you don't keep sharpening these basic skills that you don't think you need anymore. Like when I started doing life drawing classes at work, I started putting on the workshop. Basically nobody would show up, and everybody would say, last time I life drawed was in college. They left it behind. They figured they learned everything they knew. Meanwhile, I'm still here trying to struggle and get better and better and better at it, because the longer you do it, the more you learn, and you're never going to get it. If you keep that in your mind, then you will get it. And so it's that kind of thing. So I would say, just because I know the deficiencies I had in my technique, it's like, because I was ignorant of, like, damn, I need to know perspective better. I need to know this better. It still continues to this day. So no matter how good you are, you can always get better. And if you like I said, if you're too pleased with yourself, you've reached a dead end, and
yeah,
your plateauing is your plateaus get longer and longer, and your learning spike gets shorter and shorter.
yeah.
And you
You
got
were
to keep
also,
got to keep on the ball.
yeah,
If you get off that ball, you're not going to improve, and you have to push yourself. And regardless of your work stuff too, your own stuff. What do I want to say? That's why when I always see some of my friends who are really accomplished and stuff, I'm like, oh, that's great. That's great. What is your stuff like? What are you doing for your own self, not your professional work? And I want them to say, what are you doing for fun? Why did you start picking up the pencil when you were a kid in the first place? Because it was fun. So what are you doing besides your professional work that fulfills you? And that's the thing I like to keep alive in myself.
yeah.
That's why life is art, not just your art. And so I like to apply it to different things because it's fun, it's exciting, and the struggle is delicious. I like it when it hurts,
Yeah.
because I'm building things and I'm sweating. It's degrees in the garage, and I'm like trying to get this thing, but it's so satisfying when it comes out. Even if it doesn't come out, I've learned. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I'll do it better again.
Yeah, the experience is part of the joy. I mean,
Yeah, the action is
sometimes, and look, and sometimes it kicks your ass, and it's not, you don't win, like you can't win them
I,
all, but
I actually look forward to having my ass kicked. I
yeah,
want to get into something. I want to go beyond my depth. I want it to kick my ass, and I've learned more from my failures than my successes.
yeah,
It's like, that's not going to happen again, because look at this huge mess I've made, and I've gone nowhere.
yeah. Yeah,
People
and
fear
I want to go. I want to go back to a
that.
point that you were talking about earlier, which was nurturing your interests and protecting your artistic self, and
Yeah,
the importance of that.
yeah, yeah. You have to have your own interests. Besides your professional life. I mean, your professional life is one thing, but I was always a believer of you know, feeding your own head, really getting into yourself. It's this internal personal struggle that you have to assign yourself, these problems.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily art art related, as in like a sort of professional art looking, because you do a lot of cosplay. And
Yeah.
you do a lot of like you build your own props, you have your own costumes that you make
Yeah.
your own effects,
Well, it's something
and it
that
comes with its own community. We were just talking about the building a
yeah.
community of artists. This cosplay comes with its own community as well.
Well, I remember we were living together. We shared an apartment, when we were in college and first starting out. And I remember you said one thing like, my creativity doesn't stop when I put my pencils down. And I always remembered that. I'm like, yeah, my art is not just drawing. It's not just this. It's everything.
Yeah.
So you start cultivating interests in everything, and everything becomes fun. Everything becomes a problem. Everything becomes a clay in your hands to like mold and to have fun with. And if you're an artist, you shouldn't limit yourself to just one way of expressing yourself. It's all expressive. It's all your art. When I got here and met you guys, I never thought I would meet, some guys as great as you, and, to call you friends. And, we used to get into all kinds of ridiculous trouble, and it was just so much fun. So
Yeah, and
I'm
even
really
still,
grateful.
look at that. All these years later, it wasn't just a few months ago. We had gone as we're all coming out of COVID. One of the first things we did, we got ourselves together, you, me, and Richie Chavez, and we went down to the zoo to go draw.
Oh,
So what
beautiful.
you think like, well, what are we going to do? Well, obviously the choice is obvious. We went to go draw. It's something that we enjoy doing it, because I think of other professions, they're professions. And I don't think that that art works in the same way, that artists, it's a lifestyle. And
Mm-hmm.
it transcends just being, it's not like three plumbers get together and the first thing they do is they get together and find some old house to go and work on the plumbing, right? And that sort of
Who
thing.
knows? Maybe they do.
Maybe they do, but what we do is that we get together. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go get together and draw.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it's,
that's
we can do it alone, but it's not the same. Building that,
more fun.
finding that tribe, like looking at each other's drawings and seeing like, oh, I see, like, Paul is very good at sort of capturing the entire animal, getting all of it. And I was focused on like parts of the animal, just to see the different approaches. And then Richie's beautifully designed shapes,
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy stuff. Yeah.
That's the fun.
But it's great to see that, because it stimulates our
Yeah, yeah. That's the most exciting thing about it is to get together with your friends and draw together. That's why life drawing classes are great. Going to the zoo, going to lunch and drawing, it was the whole thing.
yeah,
I used to go on with Glenn Vilpu on his sketch tours of Europe, and
yeah,
you drew 24/7, day and night.
yeah,
You draw all day, have dinner, and then have a critique afterwards, and then go to drink wine and continue to draw. It's heaven. And
yeah,
it's our friendship that's lasted almost 40 years since college, in the
yeah,
mid 80s.
yeah.
And
And
we're
I think
still
that
here.
sometimes with art, because sometimes I think that other businesses or other industries, they're more secretive. And why artists are so open to share what it is that they know and what they've learned is because it is so difficult. It is so
Mhm.
difficult to learn things like composition and anatomy and structure and construction, perspective, design. All of these things are so difficult to learn that there's no way that anyone can emulate you completely. I mean,
No.
there's aspects that they can do that are similar. They can work in a similar technique, but there's just it's too vast just at the fundamental level of
Yeah.
technique, and
Yeah.
we're not even getting down to like the personal expression that one has. So that once an artist becomes proficient and confident, there isn't this idea of a threat, and instead it's the building of community. And that's why older artists are so giving of what it is that they know. in order to build this community, because they understand how difficult it is to
Yeah,
walk that journey, to
yeah,
be part of that group that is sharing this life experience.
yeah. I think once my prime, and working comes to an end, and I retire, I think I'll go back into teaching, because it's so satisfying to help other people to ease their way, or at least shine a light on their path, because you can see where you were. It's the whole Sifu student kung fu thing, it's like, and I see the way Glenn does it, and I'm like, yeah, I would like to because you don't know something until you have to teach it, and when you start teaching it, then you become proficient in it. So whenever I found, when I'm not teaching right now, but if I wanted to teach again, it would be like relearning everything and becoming a fresh, a new of way of going back, something you've studied for decades. And I find that's really fulfilling when the light bulb goes off in the student's head. You're like, oh yeah, and you see them getting it. And yeah, of course,
You
I've
see them
taught.
having fun, right?
You see them
Isn't
having
that
fun, and once they come to a realization, you're like, that's all worth it.
yeah.
And that's priceless. It's priceless. So one day I'll get back to that, because when I was doing it, it was so much fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Paul. Thanks for your insight,
You.
wisdom, your knowledge, and for also sharing your experiences as a professional, and also for participating in this
Oh
Inspiring
yeah.
Heroes series.
Oh yeah, I'm honored. I'm glad to be included in this, because there's some pretty august company on. I
Yeah.
don't know if I live up to that, but I'll do my best.